And now, the big news. India and the United Kingdom have signed the free trade agreement, which has been hailed by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer as the most significant free trade agreement signed by both countries. Listen in to what he had to say.
This is the biggest and most economically significant trade deal that the UK has made since leaving the EU. And I think I can say that it's one of the most comprehensive deals that India has ever done. So thank you, Prime Minister, for your leadership and for your pragmatism. And I'd like to thank everybody who's worked so hard to get this deal over the line.
Why is it that the Prime Minister of the UK feels that this is the most significant deal signed by the United Kingdom as far as the post-Brexit world is concerned? Let me quickly dive into the India-UK Free Trade Agreement, which is a landmark deal set to significantly bolster the Indian economy, the UK economy, and both our economies together before we bring in all of our experts. For India, this agreement is a strategic triumph, securing duty-free access for a staggering 99% of our products into the United Kingdom's market. This is immensely critical for India's robust and employment-intensive sectors. Viewers, think about our textile industry, where products like garments and fabrics often faced UK duties of up to 16%, or our world-renowned gems and jewelry sector, our growing footwear industry, alongside crucial auto components and engineering goods. These sectors were specifically targeted because they are major job creators and have immense export potential, but were previously being hampered by tariffs. These duties and tariffs have now been eliminated. Eliminating these duties immediately makes Indian goods more competitive and appealing to UK consumers as well as businesses, directly boosting our exports and in turn creating millions of jobs across the country, from manufacturing hubs to artisanal workshops. Beyond goods, the FTA opens doors for our skilled Indian professionals. This includes a streamlined path for talented individuals like our chefs, yoga instructors, musicians, and various contractual service providers to work in the United Kingdom. This does address India's strong demand for global mobility for its skilled workforce. And in a crucial step, a separate social security agreement has exempted Indian workers temporarily posted in the UK from paying social security contributions for up to 3 years, saving them and their employees significant costs. This agreement between India and UK is a vital instrument for India to diversify its global trade, enhance its manufacturing capabilities under the Make in India initiative, and secure a greater share in international services, trade, underpinning our trajectory as a rapidly growing global economic power. So that was, of course, about India. And I want to take that conversation forward first before we look at what this means for the UK specifically. I have with me Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, Ambassador Manju Seth, Dr. Sandeep Tripathi, Mr. Ajay Dua, Dr. Ajay Dua with us, and Keith Vaz, former UK Minister, with us as well. Let me begin with Dr. Ajay Dua. Dr. Dua, your first assessment, sir, of the initial announcements that have come about as far as the free trade agreement is concerned. We're learning a lot as far as textile is concerned, as far as footwear, leather goods and engineering goods are concerned. How do you witness, or how do you rather assess that the FTA will impact each of these sectors?
Thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm very pleased to arrive at an understanding in promoting their trade and related matters after trying to get to this stage for almost 2 decades. Yes, the momentum built up in the last 2 years, but we've been wanting to have this agreement for a long time. Having said that, I think that as the British Prime Minister, Sir Starmer, just mentioned, the agreement which has been signed is of considerable consequence for both the UK and India. For India, if we are to talk about having access zero duty on 99% of its product lines, which are currently being exported to the UK, where the merchandise export takes place to the UK, is a very positive sign. And in turn, we've conceded similar access to India for 85% of the products which come in from the United Kingdom. This agreement, potential as it has two still windows to cross. Number one, it requires the ratification of the British Parliament. Second, it is to be done gradually, not overnight. The reduction in duties is over a time span, for both sides, is over a time span of 5 years. But I'm sure, given the enthusiasm on both sides and the fact that the UK, after it exited EU, this is the first agreement with a substantively sized, significantly large country like India. For us, it has come at a time when, in the past, we've had to retract from some agreements or put them on hold, particularly with Japan and Korea. And we didn't enter into an agreement with the ASEAN countries and plus a couple of others, Australia, New Zealand, etc., when the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, was being negotiated, all for the fear that this might give a route to the Chinese goods to get into India on preferred terms. So for us, $60 billion is the current trade with the UK. We hope to step it up within 5 years as we keep opening. And alongside that trade, and let me be brief, we've also come to an understanding with respect to several other matters which normally go beyond a trade treaty. One is with intellectual property rights. Second is with India's export of skilled manpower to the UK. And a third one is our agreement with the UK in the totalization of social security, that whatever is being paid in India for the first 3 years for the employees of the companies going to the UK, that would suffice. They would not be required to pay the additional cost of social security, which is otherwise applicable to the employees in the UK.
Okay, all right. Let me bring in Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya as well before we turn our focus to what this FTA means for the UK specifically. Dr. Bhattacharya, I want to understand from your perspective, while tariff reduction is a headline benefit of the FTA, in your perspective, what become the most critical implementation challenges for both India and the United Kingdom in terms of realizing the ambitious economic benefits that we've laid down?
I think the implementation challenges will be the same as the critical points of this agreement, which is what was just laid out by the ambassador. Is one that services will be exported from India. There will be mobility of labor that will be allowed much more freely. Now, to implement that and to ensure that that doesn't lead to a political backlash in UK is one of the biggest challenges, because one of the reasons why UK split from the EU was on mobility. They were protesting against the labor coming from Poland, against the Polish workers who were operating in UK. And now, as a remedy to the breakup that UK had from EU, they're getting into one of the largest trade agreements, getting into one of the largest markets, which is India. But in that process, they are actually allowing the key issue which led to the split of UK from the rest of EU. So that, I believe, will be a political challenge that UK would need to manage. Also, the fact of the matter from an Indian perspective is that if we bring down the tariffs on auto to 10% for the British manufacturing, Um, the Japanese will ask the same, the Koreans will ask the same, and therefore it opens up a Pandora's box. Now, are we willing to have parity in auto, given that there is significant handicap that auto manufacturers in India have, and the automobile sector has been a star sector for India. So, are we willing to compromise that? And that's going to be a big question when we move ahead and implement this particular agreement. And the moment we start facing the pain, I think there would be challenges. So both sides there will be significant challenges, and I'm just taking the key examples. There are many more such examples which are built into this agreement, which will lead to a lot of pain when we start implementing. The point in any agreement is that the benefits will far outweigh the pain, and unfortunately for India, the couple of trade agreements that we have had earlier, which is the India Japan, the India Korea, and the India ASEAN trade agreements, we seem to have lost out on those trade agreements, which is why we were very, very careful in having this particular trade agreement, which took over 20 years to seal. And the reason basically being that we have had not so good experiences with free trade agreements earlier. I think this particular agreement has been well deliberated from both sides. Everyone is optimistic, but there will be challenges when we move forward and we implement this trade agreement.
Right, absolutely. Before I bring in the other guests, let's quickly turn our focus to the United Kingdom. The India-UK Free Trade Agreement holds profound significance, particularly in light of the recent economic challenges faced by the UK. Remember, viewers, post-Brexit, the UK economy has grappled with various headwinds. There's been persistent inflation, slow productivity growth, reduced investment, and a complex reshaping of its trade relationships. Securing this FTA with India, one of the world's fastest growing major economies, was therefore a critical move to diversify its trade partners and inject new dynamism into the UK economy. Under this deal, India will dramatically reduce tariffs on nearly 90% of British goods. This is a huge win for key UK industries, like, say, Scotch whisky, for instance, which faced a staggering 150% tariffs in India. So this will be halved immediately and further reduced to 40% over the next 10 years. This sector was crucial for the UK because India is the world's largest market for whisky by volume, offering immense potential for growth. Similarly, tariffs on certain high-value UK-made automobiles will drop from over 100% to just 10% under a quota system. This was strategic for UK's luxury and automotive sectors. Beyond this, sectors like medical devices, premium foods like salmon, and various cosmetics will also see significant duty cuts, making them more affordable and accessible in the vast Indian market. The UK also gains enhanced access for its robust financial and legal service sectors, capitalizing on its global leadership in these areas by unlocking opportunities in India's economy. This FTA is more than just about market access, though. For the UK, it's a strategic pivot to secure new growth engines and revive its economic fortunes. Remember, post-Brexit, aiming to increase the UK GDP by nearly $5 billion, £5 billion, annually. So, of course, India is hopefully going to help the UK play a significant role to achieve some of those goals. Let me bring in, on that note, Mr. Keith Vaz into the conversation. Mr. Vaz, I want to understand from your perspective, how exactly is the Indian diaspora as well as people in the United Kingdom reading the FTA?
Good afternoon from London. Clearly, everyone likes a win, and both Prime Minister Modi and Keir Starmer are claiming a win, and they've got every reason to do so. Your description that Rolls-Royces will cost less in India and people will be able to buy more whiskey. These are two areas, of course, that politicians or ex-politicians would not necessarily be celebrating. But the industries that produce them will be very pleased that they're able to do so. I certainly believe that this will create jobs in both countries, as all these agreements will eventually do. But as your previous speakers have said, Brexit has had a lot to do with it. Britain is desperately looking for trade partners after losing the best trade partner we have, which is the EU. If you look at mere percentages, as a percentage of the market, 47.7% of our goods is exported to the EU and only currently 1.9% to India. So it's not a huge market at the moment, and I'm not sure whether that percentage is going to move that much higher, because Ireland is the next on the list at 6.6%. So India is basically well down the list. So it's right that we should be looking at India as a market. And it's a failure, I suppose, of previous governments not to do so. So it's a good win for both prime ministers and both countries. It's going to increase the level of trade, though India is right at the bottom in terms of the percentages. Even if you look at what is exported to us, imported by us, the EU imports 53.1% and India only 1.8%. So there's an absolutely huge gap there. It's not going to set the world on fire, but it's important that it's happened. I, though, want to stress the politics of this visit. This is the fourth visit of Narendra Modi. I think he's probably dealing with his third prime minister in terms of meetings, probably his fifth overall. And I would like to have seen a longer visit, not just to sign this agreement in front of the cameras. I think India is politically a very, very important country. I think the fact that you have Narendra Modi there for so many years as Prime Minister, stable, secure leadership from India, this does not apply to any other country in the world. I would have liked to have seen more activities, not just a meeting at Chequers, which is Keir Starmer's country house, well, not his house, but the Prime Minister's official country house. I would like to have seen better engagement with the Indian diaspora. I would have liked to see a discussion about the role of Indian students, the fact that the British government has cut post-study work from 2 years to 18 months. Next week, Indian chefs will find it very difficult to get a visa to come to this country because they've been taken out of the special quota. So there are lots of other issues apart from free trade that mean more to the British Indian diaspora than the price of a Rolls Royce. And I would like to have seen that had happened. Hopefully, Prime Minister Modi would have invited Keir Starmer to visit India. He should have done so already, and recognize India is a massively important country now. Yes. In terms of world affairs. Let's hope that that's happened, because free trade is one thing, but there's so much politics in the world at the moment. One final point, I think everyone is making these deals because of Donald Trump. I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump, but he has turned the world upside down as far as trade is concerned. Because of the tariffs coming from the United States, all these other countries are running around making deals. And a 3-year logjam, which we have seen on the free trade deal here, has been speeded up because people need to get new partners. Yes. Because the United States is such an unstable partner.
Mr. Vaz, that was going to be my next question to you, because of course the initial economic forecasts have been rather positive about the FTA. But how resilient do you think both the economies in the countries would be, or the benefits rather of the FTA would be, against potential future global economic shocks or shifts in political priorities?
Yeah, it's lovely to have, obviously. If you buy a bottle of whiskey in Goa, for example, my hometown, it will be cheaper now as a result of this deal, but I'm not sure whether that will desperately benefit the people of India to be able to buy cheaper whiskey. We certainly would like cheaper textiles coming from India, because I think India makes the best textiles in the world, and that'll benefit your economy. But there are massive global waves going across. Every single day, Donald Trump, in his very insecure and social media driven way in which he runs his country, is putting tariffs up and putting tariffs down, with India, with the United Kingdom, with the EU, with Canada. We're living in a period of immense economic turmoil. Forget about Brexit. That was bad for us, of course. I was for us staying in the EU. But this is far worse when you get an American president, the largest economy in the world, changing his mind every single day, depending on who's been nice to him and who nominates him for the Nobel Prize for Peace. We simply cannot have a world economic order that is based on that kind of activity. That's why I think India's role is absolutely crucial. I honestly believe that Narendra Modi is probably the leader of the free world, because the United States seems to have given up this role. It wants to be very insular, and therefore other countries like India, the United Kingdom, have got to pick up the tab and pick up the leadership that is required. So I think I was expecting more from this meeting. I would have liked it to have been a longer meeting on other issues apart from signing a free trade agreement, because I think we have so much to gain from our relationship with India and India with the United Kingdom. And the biggest export, of course, is people. People
Yes.
trying legitimately to come into this country who are finding it very difficult to come from India in order to get those visas to work here. And I'm not sure this FTA helps them.
Okay, Dr. Sandeep Tripathi, bringing into the conversation here. Another pertinent point that was raised by Prime Minister Modi during the press conference was a discussion on terrorism, and secondly, he spoke about how extremist forces should not be allowed to use democratic countries to undermine other democracies, and of course that was a signal to Khalistanis operating out of the United Kingdom. Do you feel that somewhere India may have been able to leverage the free trade agreement to come to some sort of a logical conclusion on a plan of action as far as Khalistani extremism operating out of UK soil is concerned?
First of all, thank you so much for having me in this show. And yes, I do agree with you that on behalf of the FTA, Free Trade Agreement, Prime Minister Modi also has clarified that the soil should not be allowed to any kind of anti-India sentiment, especially Khalistani movement, because we have seen the kinds of some voices that are taking place in UK, and we have seen in the last Canada. But Canada has realized seriously, and now it was the right time to send a message to UK also that it is okay. It is very historic day for us to finalize agreement, free trade agreement. But at the same time, there are some political questions like Khalistani movement, and the kind of voices are there. They are protesting, they are disrupting. So it was a signal to UK authority that you must stop, you must control, you must monitoring this kind of sentiment that are taking place against India in UK. The first is. Second point is, which is most important, which I'd like to make here, that this free trade agreement, we need to keep in mind that I am totally agree with my co-panelists that we live in an era of highly turmoil, immense economic turmoil ecosystem. We live in an era where we need to a free market. We need to have a freedom from trade war. We need to want freedom from protectionism. We need to somehow have a freedom from a kind of insecurity that has in US politics. So see, last 4 months has been a very serious and concern for the entire global order. The kind of politics, the kind of Trump disorder, the kind of Trump politics is taking place. It is serious concern not only for the liberal economy but entire the ecosystem of global politics. See, US politics, because you need to see this trade agreement, the context is very important. And I absolutely agree with my co-panelists that we forget about the Brexit era. It's okay, the post-Brexit UK, was looking for a market like India as a growth engine. India is a very fertile demography, very sustainable and very, you can say, stable market we have, the kind of stable market we have, and emerging economy, that is all the fact. But the most important point that a classical ally, a very perpetual classical ally of the Eurocentric order, like UK, France, Australia, Japan, they all are under the stress. Nobody knows
Yes.
what will happen tomorrow. Nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. No, see, the word politics should not be run this kind of one-man reality. So
Yes, yes.
Trump is not posturing like US president the entire history. He is showing the one-man reality so that he will come and make announcement. Okay, I will impose 100%, 200% tariff if you will join this camp and that camp. This is not the politics, my dear friend. And last, see, this point, that's why Indian Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, has clearly categorized that this is historic. Why this is historic?
Yes.
Why this is historic? Because it ensures both sides double contribution convention agreement.
Okay.
That it will ensure social security from both the sides.
Okay, all right. We have some live visuals coming in of Prime Minister Modi. He's continuing his tour on with the UK PM Keir Starmer. We were being informed that earlier the Prime Minister was also interacting with the diaspora as well as with business owners in London. Ambassador Manju Seth also joins me on the broadcast. Ambassador Seth, I want to understand from your perspective, ma'am, beyond the immediate economic gains, we've heard both the Prime Ministers talk about why this deal is significant, especially the UK Prime Minister, who said that this is the most significant deal that the UK has signed in the post-Brexit era so far. What are the broader geopolitical implications in your reading, ma'am, of this FTA for India and the UK?
I think one or two things that we have to remember is that yes, post-Brexit, it is a very important agreement for the UK because it ensures, as Prime Minister Keir Starmer said, ensures jobs, ensures doubling of the trade, ensures much more investment coming into the UK and ease of business. And from the Indian point of view as well, opens up a lot of sectors, especially for our small MSMEs, etc., labor-intensive sectors. So from both sides, it is a win-win situation. But if you, the second point is, as Prime Minister also said, that we have to ensure our domestic concerns, interests were also safeguarded, and this particular FTA, which it's sort of one-to-one quid pro quo. It is a broader. If you look at the whole agreement, it's called a Comprehensive Economic and Trade Trade Agreement. So it is not limited in its scope. It covers everything. Education is also covered, and some non-tariff barriers have been included. So social security aspect has been covered, and India has made it. And India has also made it a kind of focus and a messaging, I think, to other countries as well, that this is what we would like in an FTA, which is mutually beneficial, and not like what President Trump would like to have, irrespective of what your concerns are. We want this. So I think this is also a clear message to the US. I believe that the UK, which is also a very big market, it's an important player on the world stage, and it's an important partner for India and also for the US. But it has taken our concerns, our sensitivities on board in the agriculture sector, and in which we are very, very we have concerns. We are small farmers. We cannot allow that. And unfettered, and the GMOs that the US wants to, send into India. So I think it is something which we have to hold our ground. We don't know how the US FTA will pan out, but yes, in the UK FTA, we see that these concerns have been taken on board. The products that were of concern for us have been sort of not been covered or have been excluded, and areas of mutual benefit for both sides have been covered, giving both sides to say that we have won. So I think it's a win-win situation, and so it will also serve as a kind of template for other FTAs, or if you want to call it FTA or CETA, with other countries. And I believe that it also sends a message to to the EU to some extent. We are negotiating an FTA with the EU also. So I think there also it'll be a kind of game changer in a way, where we can say that this is what our deadlines are, and this is how we would like to negotiate. In every FTA, there is give and take. It's not. It's only not what I want and what you want. It is, yes, you take some, I give some. That kind of approach underlines or underpins any negotiation. And I believe that this particular FTA CETA has achieved a very fine balance, and come up with a win-win situation for both sides.
Okay, Dr. Dua, bringing you back into the conversation. So, in your assessment, picking up on what Ambassador Seth has said, does this FTA signal a shift in both India and UK's long-term trade strategy, especially in the context of, say, UK in a post-Brexit era, where it has a very clear agenda that has been spelled out by the UK Prime Minister today, where he says we're in a new global era where we need to forge deeper partnerships and alliances? And how do you think it could influence future FTA negotiations with other major economies?
I'm in agreement with what Ambassador Seth just mentioned. The agreement which has been signed or entered into today, though it would take time to get into effect, as is provided for, the details of it have been mentioned, is a starting point, a beginning for a review, a total revisit of the Indo-UK relationships. India-UK had relationships have got affected over the years with UK's proximity to the United States. Let's not deny that fact at all. The US has been the prime mover in some ways of the entire set of NATO countries. That what they do, etc., they have to be following the US line, towing the US line in international fora, as well as in bilateral, their understandings with the different parts of the world. I think entry into signing of the agreement today, which has indicated the broad contours for our trade, how India would be willing to enter into trade agreements with other countries, is a very good signal to the United States. Look, the world has started respecting our red flags, that the Indian dairy, Indian agriculture is not going to be opened up for the reasons Ambassador Seth also mentioned. These are absolutely essential to the survival of half the Indian population, virtually. It may not account for more than 20% of the GDP of the country, but dependence of the number of people of India on agriculture, dairying, is humongous. And it's not going to come down. We've seen it. As long as we can just take care of providing employment to the incremental population, our population is still increasing. That itself is is going to be a great achievement for India. But reducing the number of people dependent upon agriculture is going to be a long-term solution, though highly required. Having said that, I would also think that it was a very good move to open up virtually every sector of trade, rather than picking up item by item and then trying to negotiate the tariff rates and the non-tariff barriers which would be applicable to that particular classification, the trade classified item. We have broadly called it almost everything, except for a handful of things on which the UK would not reduce the duties on coming from India, and we've identified about 15% of the items which come from the UK on which we would not give concession. So broadly, I think that's the way to approach. And this is a message both for my ex-colleagues in the trade negotiation teams of India, as well as the negotiators outside, that if you go into 80,000 items which get exported from India, roughly that's something that it may be a small volume or a large volume, it is almost impossible to arrive at an understanding in any finite period of negotiations. Let's exclude the items on which we are not going to be giving concession. Both sides look at those, and the rest we open up. It would help, and we are following a model which we tried out with Japan, Korea, items, classified items coming from outside and others, and we saw how it affected us to the extent that we had to request and actually cut a sorry figure by telling both Japan and Korea that we want to put a halt to the agreement for a while till both these are being revisited. That doesn't send out a very good message, and I've gone public about it, saying that I don't endorse that kind of entry or signing of FTAs. So finally, I would say let's be looking at things beyond trade, and I'm absolutely in agreement with Right Honourable Keith Vaz, not because he's from India, not because he's not very happy that Scotch whisky has been opened and Go and Feni might face some competition from where he comes. But the fact is that we need to be talking about much more substantive issues. Certainly, President Trump has done a service to the rest of the world by throwing open the leadership of the free world.
Okay.
Which was earlier taken to be granted rests with the United States. I don't think his conduct so far and what it's likely to be in the years ahead is going to get kudos to the United States for all that it has done over the last 75 or 80 years post the World War. So there, UK, India, as well as the positive thing is the UK is now even inclined to re-look at its exit from the EU, and I put it as a question of just time before EU accepts it, and otherwise they work out. It'll be more or less status quo ante. The leadership should rest with those countries and India and maybe Brazil, etc. Multipolar. We are not looking for a single unipolar world in which one or two countries call the shots, but many, and that will be good. And I think we are heading towards it.
Okay, Mr. Vaz, bringing you back into the conversation there, when we talking beyond numbers, then how critical is public buy-in in both the nations for the long-term success as well as the sustainability of the free trade agreement, and how do you think that can be fostered better? The reason why I asked that question is because Prime Minister Modi raised 3 pertinent points in his part of the press statement, wherein he spoke about, of course, some sort of an understanding on terrorism, and he also spoke about how we cannot allow extremist forces, and in my reading that was perhaps a hint towards the Khalistani element in the UK, how we cannot allow extremist forces to use democratic soil to undermine other democracies. So given that he has now spoken about it publicly in the presence of the UK Prime Minister at a time when we are signing the free trade agreement, does give us clarity on the fact that yes, India did raise these matters in the run-up to the free trade agreement. We did not decide to keep trade and people apart. That's why my question to you, how critical is public buy-in for both of these countries towards the long-term success of the free trade agreement?
I think that's a very important point. The fact is that we need to work harder, as everyone has said on this panel, to put this relationship right at the top of the political agenda. After all, Britain is no longer in the EU. There are cordial relations with the United States through common language, but that's about it. We'll know when Donald Trump comes to Scotland in a couple of weeks' time, the difference between a Donald Trump visit and a Narendra Modi visit. I can remember the times a few years ago, a few decades ago, when there was no desire to give an official visa to Narendra Modi when he wanted to come and visit the United Kingdom. And some of us got together and made sure that this happened. Everything has changed since then. As our fellow panelists have said, the world is a very different place. There is a vacuum out there that needs to be seized. I think the British public would much rather have a stronger relationship with India than they would with the United States. That's my view. But of course, there are problems to do with the use of democratic institutions by extremist groups. I'm not saying who they are, but that's a fact of democracy. You will get a democracy wanting to defend its values, being very open, but you will also find there are people who are prepared to use that democracy in order to cause difficulties. I can remember not long ago people scaling the walls of the Indian High Commission and trying to remove the Indian flag from the High Commission itself. So we always have to be vigilant on this, and we always have to make sure that we are sensitive to the needs of a country. You can't just sign a deal with them. I think there is a package here to do with democratic values that we need to accept. If, for example, similar forces were using India as a platform for attacking the United Kingdom, I'm sure the British Prime Minister would be the first to raise this issue. So it is important that they are discussed. I think it's critical that Narendra Modi has mentioned this, because it is something that we need to put into the mix when we have these discussions. But the most important relationship is not between Narendra Modi and Keir Starmer. It is between the people of our two countries. And we have fantastic relations between the people of our two countries because of the very large Indian diaspora, 2.5 million now, living in the United Kingdom. There's even been a former Prime Minister who was of Indian origin. The chairman of the BBC is of Indian origin, and so on. We've made some massive gains since I was elected nearly 40 years ago, when I was the only Indian origin MP. Now, there's 90 Black and Asian MPs in the British House of Commons. So progress has been made, but I think the best way to maintain this is to keep that momentum going, for Keir Starmer to go and visit New Delhi, to start a new deal in that relationship that goes beyond trade and goes to the democratic values that keep us together.
Okay, before I bring in Archana Jahagirder, who joins us on the broadcast as well, Ambassador Manju Seth, your thoughts on the same question, ma'am. As far as our people-to-people ties are concerned, was there also a message by the Prime Minister to other nations that are clearly eyeing a free trade agreement with India, including, say, a country like Australia, where we've just in the past 4 days heard about and witnessed racial attacks and hate crimes against the Hindu community? So is there a message, larger message to the global community in there that we will not merge trade, or rather we will not separate trade from what's happening truly on the ground?
Absolutely. I think we have made that message has gone very clearly. That yes, we will talk trade, we will talk business, but we will also talk security of our personnel, security for the country, and for our diaspora, whether they are PIOs or NRIs. It's definitely very important for the host countries to ensure that these kind of attacks are stopped, and there should be enough security available and to prevent, and also in general to create a kind of a sort of public awareness that, you know, it's diversity and is important, and democracy is important. So when two democratic countries are working together and their nationals are moving between the countries for work or for contributing, here for Australia, as far as Australia is concerned, we have a huge Indian diaspora, really well off, contributing to the economy in every single sector. Very, very huge. And so this kind of racial attack that has taken place, I think, should be unacceptable. Their government should condemn it and ensure that such attacks do not take place. And yes, when we are talking of FTAs, these issues will come in with any country that, including, if you recall, with Canada, we did bring up this issue in general talks as well, that, first you have to ensure the safety and of our citizens, of our high commissions, of our embassies, and then we talk about free trade agreements, or we talk of a closer partnership in any area, whether it's defense or security or free trade. So I think this is an important message that has gone, and clearly, having it mentioned along with the discussions with the FTA does give our position, makes our position very clear, makes India's position very clear and categorical. I think this is a big plus point, and that which I see in this statement. And I feel that the message would have gone to the UK, and we did see that there was no. Of course, they're still saying that we want to ensure free speech, etc. But free speech and democracy does not mean targeting, harming the interests of a friendly democratic country.
Absolutely. Let me bring in on that note Archana Jahagirdar into the conversation as well. Archana Jahagirdar, your first reading of the free trade agreement before I ask a very specific question.
It's a net positive. Britain is already our sixth largest forest investment partner. And, given the economic activity in the country, I think this is going to lead to more investments coming in from the UK. And I think that's a net good for us, both for our startups and overall for industry, because it will be favorable, for a bunch of our sectors like manufacturing, especially. And I do think that, once the bilateral investment treaty also gets signed, I think that'll further lead to investments coming from the UK. And, investments is always good when it is, it'll be good for Indian industry.
Okay, Mr. Jahagirdar, I want to understand from you, for the sectors that were specifically targeted for tariff cuts by both sides. So for India, it was textiles and gems and footwear, and the UK focused on, say, the whiskey industry or automobiles. What, in your assessment, become the potential competitive pressures, or one can say vulnerabilities, that could emerge for the domestic industries in both the countries once the FTA is fully implemented, and how prepared are these sectors to leverage the opportunities?
No, I don't think you should underestimate, promoters and businessmen on either side in either country. I think, FTAs get negotiated from time to time at different points. And I think, this was in the works. And I think the business communities on both sides knew and were aware of it and have taken appropriate sort of steps to both safeguard and, of course, look for other opportunities. I think, sometimes when these agreements happen, it favors certain sectors, but at the same time, it allows tailwinds for in other ways. So I don't think we should see this as a negative for some of the, let's say, the automobile sector in India. I'm sure our automobile industry is extremely competitive, and there have been upskilling and upgrading their technologies, their readiness for the market and for this treaty as well. And I think on the other side would equally be true. So I'm not particularly concerned, and I think, when these treaties are discussed and signed, these concerns are taken into account.
Okay, all right. On that note, viewers, I've run out of time, but I thank all of our guests and experts for joining us to take this conversation forward. We will, of course, continue to go further into the details of the India-UK FTA through the course of the day. Stay tuned.